Something that I've learned over time, or I've kind of matured into, is to not shy away from bringing your person into work, like bringing your personal self in, not like in a too much information type of way, but just to kind of explain like who you are and what drives you.
You're listening to the Building Better Futures podcast, where innovation meets inspiration. In each episode, host Eric Hurani journeys alongside notable thought leaders who are shaping the future, cultivating exceptional work cultures, and nurturing the next generation of trailblazers. We aim to spark inspiration by engaging in dialogue with leaders from groundbreaking companies, innovative projects, and exceptional teams. Our goal is to empower individuals to positively impact those around them and leave a lasting legacy of positive change in our communities and society at large. Let's dive in together and explore what it takes to build better futures, one conversation at a time.
Today, I'm excited to discuss New York City construction and alternative delivery with Yvi McEvilly, Assistant Commissioner for Alternative Delivery at New York City DDC. Yvi, welcome to the show and thanks for being on with us.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Of course. In like a couple of minutes, a minute or two, tell me about yourself so the audience gets to know you a little bit. Your background, where'd you grow up, school, education, whatever you kind of want to share.
Sure. So I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in the suburbs. I am a first generation, so I was the first in my family that was born in the United States. All of my siblings were born in Vietnam. And I went to school at the University of Virginia, studied architecture, went there for undergrad and grad school. And then I moved right away to New York. I started in the private sector, working as a landscape architect. Then I moved on to the nonprofit sector where I learned really project management skills that transitioned me to my career at New York City EDC, where I was there for 8 years, last as a vice president in the capital program, overseeing kind of complex design and construction projects. And that launched me to my current position at the Department of Design and Construction as an assistant commissioner of alternative delivery.
Very cool. So I appreciate the background. And before we get into the core of the conversation, which is going to be the alternative delivery and design build and how you guys build New York City, I always like to take a moment to have good news and gratitude. Is there any personal or professional good news you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I guess for my good news and gratitude, I would give that to my team at DDC, the Alternative Delivery Group. We are about 12 to 13 people strong. It's a relatively young group within the organization, and the team has been evolving for many years, adapting to this new delivery method. And so, I really say kudos to their strength and their perseverance and also their appetite for trying something new and kind of leading the way at DDC.
That's awesome. I'll share a gratitude as well. I like to do that. And today my gratitude is going to be to one of our team members. One of my direct reports actually went out on maternity for a few months. And so my gratitude is both to her having a beautiful child and family, but also for her coming back to the team. So I'm just very grateful for all of that. So it's been a great couple of months. It's hard, when a team member leaves, but I will also share gratitude for the rest of my team for really picking up her responsibilities while she was out, and giving her an opportunity to step away. I think that was really awesome to experience, firsthand. All right, cool. Well, let's jump right into it. Let's start with just tell us about the design build program at DDC. How has it evolved? Do you find there's like misconceptions people have about it? Anything you want to set straight here?
Yeah, sure. So I'll first give you the background of the program, the design build program, and this is the pilot program. So it's outside of the larger borough-based jails program that everyone might know about. So the design build pilot program, we have about 14 projects right now. We're 5 years into the program, 14 projects. There are 9 that are active right now in construction. And we started really focused on public building projects. So we do a lot of projects for the Parks Department, such as maintenance and operations facilities. We also do recreation centers. We do projects on behalf of HRA, for example, or in coordination with NYCHA. But in the past couple of years, we've started testing out more infrastructure projects. And that's where I think it's starting to get really interesting to see how design build works on the infrastructure side. So we currently have, for example, water main and kind of safety, like pedestrian safety type of projects on behalf of DEP and DOT. And in this year, later this year, we'll be putting out some pretty exciting RFQs. One is for a deep sewer manhole, which is a kind of also a research and development type of project on behalf of DEP, and also Greenway, which is a massive new project typology for DDC and for design build. And that's going to be an in-water esplanade in Lower Manhattan.
Very cool. And so those are, I'm assuming just by in the last 5 years has been traditional design build. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So up until last year, DDC had authorization for traditional design build. And, you know, the projects have kind of, we've been able to test a lot of different project typologies because of that. But just last year, we had expanded legislation, so we're able to do progressive design builds. Progressive design builds, the way the legislation is written, it's a little bit, it's not exactly what we wanted because price is still a factor in the evaluation, but it's a step in the right direction, and I think we'll get there. So with this new progressive design build, we can use that for resiliency projects. So I think this year we're looking to see what we can roll out under that name. And then on top of that, we now have CM builds. So that's a whole nother delivery method that we can use now as a tool.
Well, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I feel like even as someone in the industry, those terms are like often thrown around, and so how would you define traditional design build? Give us the quick overview of that, and then maybe the same thing for progressive design build, and then also CM build. And if you would like, and again, this is now becoming a loaded question, but maybe touch on, you just mentioned like it was up until last year, so there was some legislation passed. You talked about wasn't
Yeah.
exactly what you wanted, and I don't know that legislation is ever exactly what we want, but you guys
Yeah.
got some great authorization in there. Maybe you want to touch on that and why that was necessary to even give you guys the ability to utilize some of these tools.
Sure. Okay. So, so I'll break it down by the different delivery methods, right? So we have traditional design build. Again, this is one single entity that DDC would contract with that's responsible for both design and construction. And in traditional design build, which is generally lump sum, we would have a fixed price upfront when we give NTP for all of design and construction. On the contrary, there's progressive design builds where in an ideal world, you would have, so again, a same single entity for design and construction. And at NTP, you would have the price for design. And the concept is that the design builder and the owner would progress together to develop the design and the scope and come to a price. Like they would progress together to finalize price, and say that price finalization comes somewhere between 60 and 90% design. And that's when you would reach the kind of phase two or the final binding proposal that you would launch into that kind of locks in the price for construction. And so in that progressive design build model, the owner has greater flexibility to develop the projects as time goes on, to kind of better understand the price and kind of the risk as you work towards the final, the final binding proposal. And so there's just greater flexibility and kind of risk allocation throughout the life of the projects. And then finally, CM builds, that is where DDC would hold the contract with the designer and then hold a contract with a construction manager. That construction manager is responsible for then buying out all of the trades and being responsible for all of the subcontractors. So it's three slightly nuanced structures in terms of team organization, and the goal or the reason why we would want those different delivery methods is so that we, as the primary capital construction manager for the city, so that we have flexibility to match kind of the right delivery method to the right project. Because right, nothing is a silver bullet, but we're just trying to best like match up the needs on a per project basis. So we wanted that flexibility.
That is very cool. And I know even just DDC as an entity, you take on a wide variety of projects, right? Because you have a wide variety of clients, really. You're really building for other operating entities within New York City. So I appreciate you giving us that breakdown, especially on the risk allocation. I'm a DBIA, and so when I took my capstone course, the one thing that like still to this day rings out to me, and I feel like even on the private side, we don't always do the best job of is and I'll, it was the way they phrased it was like risk should be handled by the party best able to manage and mitigate it, right? And we
Mhm.
don't necessarily do that today, and that I think becomes a challenge for a lot of us, like, and it's not just the owners pushing down, it's also GCs pushing down to the subs, right? Hey, all of the risk is on you, you're the sub. It's like, okay, but can I manage this risk really? And sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, but it's really interesting. And for that reason, I think progressive design build is great because it also offers the owner a lot of flexibility and capabilities of managing a project the way they want it to be completed. So
Right,
very cool.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's like we have to be thoughtful about how we are planning our projects and to your point, not push all of the risk onto our consultant, our contractor, because then we'll end up paying for that, right? Because nothing is ever,
Yeah.
it's just going to be, as my, as someone in my past life, a good mentor would always say, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? So we just have to think through like what, for example, would be a responsibility that the owner still holds on to, or whether that's environmental review or some type of approval versus what we ask the design builder to do, because we really need to leverage everyone's strength because it's truly a partnership and a collaborative method.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way, especially about progressive design build. The collaboration is key, and it's just helpful to everyone in the process. So, well, I appreciate you giving us the overview there. Now, why should people care, right? Why should the general public be excited or go out? And a lot of this is also about like, when I say this, the show, it's about informing people about what our industry does, right? And DDC is a great example of all the good stuff we do for the communities we build in.
Mhm.
But so why should the general public care about this? Why should they go out and advocate for more of this? What's the impact to taxpayers and communities and local businesses now that you guys have this additional legislation or additional capabilities through the legislation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because it's such a nuanced thing, right? Like project delivery. But I think that people should care because the reason we advocate and the reason we do alternative delivery is that we can finish projects faster. So in the end, that means lower costs. That means opening facilities to the public sooner. So, for example, we're able to open a recreation center in 3 years after NTP of the entire contract. And so we estimate that's at least a 2 years time savings, right? So you're able to get kids into the swimming pool, learning, like attending swim lessons 2 years earlier than they normally would have been. So you're able to reach like kind of an even younger generation in that way. And so, if we keep in mind the mission, which is building facilities for the public, for New Yorkers, and that's really the crux of our portfolio. That's why this work matters to us, right? So it's not just about like, oh, risk allocation or cost savings all the time. It's ultimately about being able to serve the public faster. And again, we're doing this on the infrastructure side with upgrading sewer systems, sidewalks, building pedestrian ramps that are ADA accessible. So, that's why we think it's important.
Yeah. So for the audience that is not part of the industry and doesn't understand this as well, it'll be done faster and it'll be done cheaper, hopefully. So those two things are good for everybody. It
Yeah,
really works in saving costs and time, especially.
right, right.
I was at an event with Tom Foley a couple of weeks ago, and he actually showed us pictures of that the aquatic facility you were just talking about. So it looks beautiful, and he had mentioned the same thing in terms of time savings and how the design the delivery method was able to help DDC complete that in such a great way. So
Yep.
um all right, very cool. So I'm gonna change topics here a little bit. And I like to talk about leadership. And obviously, you're a leader in the industry. You're a leader at DDC. You thanked your team at the beginning, which I think is a great sign of leadership. To have gratitude for the people that help you accomplish what you
Mm.
can. Um, so what are some like personal challenges you have faced as a leader, pushing for these changes? I know it's not easy, right? I'm sure there were, maybe trips up to Albany or at least with the, local politicians and, local, other industry and agency leaders. Um, and so what were those personal challenges like, and how have they shaped you as a leader today? Do you feel like you've changed as a leader because you're pushing kind of the cutting edge of construction and delivery methods?
I say this sometimes, and I'm not sure how much it resonates with everyone. It depends on kind of what side of the coin you're on. But I feel like design build and alternative delivery, it's at the same time like an incredibly popular movement or trend. But at the same time, for those that have been doing this for many more decades, for example, and they're used to traditional design bid build, it's also very unpopular because it represents change. And so as a leader, I've had to recognize that, the popularity and the unpopularity that can exist at the same time and be comfortable in both circles, be comfortable when everyone's talking about how great it is, but also be able to kind of respond to people that are skeptical, while understanding their position, but maintaining kind of the power or the motivation to say that, like, I know this is kind of the best thing for a project, for example, or to pass that kind of strength on to my team when they face adversity, even if it's like a minor type of adversity. But it's always it often feels like trying to persuade someone against the norm or trying to explain something that's slightly more progressive than people might be used to. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's funny. When I phrased that question to you, I kind of only looked at external challenges, but you're right. I bet a lot of the challenges internal, right? People that have been doing traditional design bid build for 30, 50, 100 years. I mean, there's companies probably even older than that, 150 years
Yeah.
in this region.
Right, right, exactly. And I think one type of statistic that I like to throw out there to keep things in perspective, DDC's capital portfolio is $33 billion, right, going into 2025. And the percentage of design build projects it's $1 billion out of 33 billion. So it's 3% of DDC's overall portfolio. So it's actually, kind of like a baby small percentage, but there is a lot of kind of effort and emphasis going into it. But just to give like a sense of scale to the listeners.
That's fair. You mentioned that earlier, right? It's a pilot program. These are, you just got legislation on something. CM Build isn't even out yet theoretically, right? There's no CM
Right.
Build contract for DDC yet. So, that's a good point. So we are highlighting a lot of these, but it's 90 something percent of the work is not done through these methods, at least.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
But don't worry, we're still quite busy, quite, working tirelessly on it.
No, of course. And so when those challenges like do arise, and you're saying you're guiding your team to them, how do you manage that, like the cultural challenge that can come when, introducing something new even to your own team, right? Like I'll give a personal anecdote, but like this probably happens every other month. I have an idea, right? I think I have the best idea in the world, and I'm like, all right, guys, this is what we're gonna do today. I'm very open to feedback, and we go back and forth about if it really is a good idea and how are we going to execute it. But how do you do that? How do you manage, because you may have directives that are legally required, right? Legislation that requires you to do certain things. And how do you manage your team to meet those requirements?
I really try to lead by example, um, and kind of be a role model. And so when I introduce kind of a concept or try to guide a project team in a slightly different direction, I always, of course, value their perspective. And I try to bring them along in the conversation. So it's never, I never try to be top down authoritative. Okay, this is what we need to do. Now go do it. Right. It's always, okay, this is our goal. And then explain why I think that goal is important to get the buy-in, and then together to brainstorm ways for attacking that goal, or reaching that. So I always feel like it's better to bring people on board early, and have, even if it feels like there are too many people in a meeting, sometimes that's better. Sometimes it's just the feeling of being included, being heard, that's really important, that it pays off in the end, to be collaborative, to be inclusive, and ultimately like find that shared goal or that shared value, and remind everyone kind of why they're in the room, even if they may seem kind of ancillary to the decision making, because they're truly not. It's a team effort.
And I think, I know I can personally vouch, and I'm sure a lot of people can, for the inclusive nature that you lead, because, I was fortunate enough as part of CMAA to be at the roundtable discussion you guys had recently. And I think it's a great initiative for DDC to participate, or to partake in. And I hope other agencies start to do that. And so as we're talking about being inclusive and receptive to feedback, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk to us about that. What was some of the specific feedback from the industry that's like shaped the evolution of the current pilot program you are? What were your best, like, what were the greatest takeaways you had from it? And maybe things you even changed, or if there were any.
So I think I stated the program is 5 years in. We have 9 active contracts, and so on top of 9 active contracts, we had 9 procurements, right? Where we had chances to debrief with industry with the teams that weren't selected. And so we're taking everything in equally, right? So on the procurement side, we heard that, for example, our in-market process might have been too long, or it might have required too much from proposers. In design build, we have what we call collaborative dialogue meetings, or CDMs, which are confidential meetings with the shortlisted teams. So at the beginning of the pilot, at most we had like 9 CDMs, which take a lot of time. And it was something that was necessary at the beginning, as both industry and DDC kind of found our way, found our legs, right? But we've tried to be more efficient and scale it down to 3 CDMs, for example, to reduce the amount of effort, to acknowledge to industry that we know this takes a lot of time to be proposing on a project. We value that, and we're going to really streamline what we want to get out of the in-market process, and also make it beneficial to the proposers as well. So that's one kind of key example that we've adapted to.
Very cool. And have you heard back from like some of those contractors or teams thanking you for making that change? Because I mean, that does sound like a huge change. That's a lot of saved time, effort,
Yeah,
and.
yeah. It's interesting because sometimes when we try to reduce it further to 2 CDMs, we get asked actually to have another one. So
Agreed.
it is good to see that there's value both ways. So I was just trying to think of if there was another example I could share about a lesson. Oh, stipends. Actually, stipends are a huge thing, where at the beginning of our pilot project, we weren't able to offer stipends. We know that's a design build best practice,
Yeah.
right? To kind of make the procurement competitive, to serve as like a partial payment to the teams. And so we now are able to offer stipends. They're capitally eligible. And we hope to kind of continue on that track, always offer stipends, and even see if we could break into more types of incentives in the future.
That's awesome. And was that stipend, is that like one of those things that has to be authorized by legislation, or how does that get approved? Or is it like a thing with the controller you just need to get registered and approved prior to?
Yeah, it's more at the city level, where it's kind of overseen by the Office of Management and Budget, but we're able now to offer them, and we have a way of calculating stipends based on the complexity of the project, the dollar value of the project, and how much we're asking proposers to do in the in-market phase. So it's never like a stable percentage. It's always kind of tweaked on a per project basis.
Very cool. And is the stipend specifically for the designers, or is it for the team as a whole, both designer and builder?
It's up to the team how they want to split it. So
Very
it's
cool.
just to the proposer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I only ask that because I know, and I want to say traditionally, but maybe only in my experience. I know stipends are usually for the designers, but they are really necessary. And we're smaller parts of these teams as a sub consultant, so we don't have the same expenses some of the bigger parts of the team have. But I'll
Yeah.
hear some of these proposal costs just to put the proposal together, and it blows my mind. So I'm sure they're very thankful for whatever they can recover on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if they're not successful, because that does take a big chunk of their time and budget.
Right.
Um, all right. So there was another question I wanted to ask you about going back to, we were talking about how there's some challenges because people that are used to traditional design bid builder, they're kind of like maybe not open to the change. So for the professionals in the AEC industry, right, what steps can we be taking to prepare ourselves or to engage with alternative delivery projects? What should we be doing and not resisting it, but to help, but also be successful in it? Do you have any tips for the AEC community?
Yeah, I think if we love to see, of course, we always appreciate the teams that we are currently working with or have worked with in the past, but we always get so excited when we see new firms that hadn't proposed before, right? Because that means we're doing the right thing, we're being inclusive, we're kind of reaching out to community, the AEC industry. So I would say for those that are interested, do the DBIA training. I guess this is a, a plug for DBIA in a way, but that really governs the shape of our program and a lot of our best practices. So we strongly encourage proposers to be trained. If you could even do the certification, that's even better. We're starting to require that on some of our projects for key personnel. I would say also don't be afraid if you haven't been on a team before, because when we ask for team experience, right, it doesn't necessarily need to be the designer and the builder as a team together. As long as you can kind of show or explain a strong rationale for wanting to partner, that goes a long way to say like, okay, these are our values. These are how we would leverage each other's expertise. This is how we would collaborate. That's kind of what we want to know about.
Very cool. That's really interesting. And don't worry about plugging DBIA. We are fans of DBIA here on the show. So
Mhm.
I'm a member. I'm accredited. It's a good organization, and I've definitely learned a lot, and I've enjoyed my experience with them.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions here about like community, and then I want to jump into CM Build. But what are things that because as much as we are part of the industry, we're also typically taxpayers and community members and in other ways. Um, what else can we do to like help these initiatives, right? We want to get more legislation passed. We want to get more authority to DDC. What are ways that we can be involved to do that?
Yeah. I think broad scale, like policy, right? It would just be advocating to your local council members that you're interested in alternative delivery and getting DDC more tools for DDC as an agency to make decisions on how to deliver projects. I think on a project basis, it's also around advocating because on alternative delivery and specifically design build projects, we need to understand the project kind of requirements upfront. It's a very front loaded process. So everything that the community wants, the community needs, same with the stakeholder or the sponsor agency, we kind of wrap all of that up and put it in the RFP that goes out. So the time to kind of settle all of that, kind of air out the different interests of everyone involved in a project, that happens early. So that's what I would say in terms of like advocating for your local kind of projects.
Cool. And I mean, I think it's important probably for all of us and not just for this instance with DDC and alternative delivery, but just to be involved in your community and try to understand, where your tax dollars are going and how are they being spent and making sure you're building a better future. I guess that's the way to say
Right,
it.
right, exactly.
Um, so I want to give you like a minute here. I know the CM Build program is brand new. We were just at the roundtable. That's really exciting. Is there anything you want to share about that or can share about that or anything? I know you're excited about it. I know you and I have spoken offline about it as well. So
Mhm. So CM Build is something that DDC is incredibly excited about. We are currently able to use CM Build just in emergency declaration kind of instances, but now we're able to use it on a very specific portfolio of library and cultural projects. They need to be over $5 million. But it's going to really open the door, right? So design build is great for brand new projects, like a brand new building, for example. But for our library and cultural projects, those are often in older buildings that require a lot of repair and renovation. And that's where CM Build can really come in handy. And so we're building out this program this year. We're writing a new contract. As you know, from our industry engagement, we released an RFI. We received 17 responses, which was, we were really excited to see that. We met with industry associations. We are having one-on-one meetings with some of the RFI respondents. And we're also meeting with public owners like EDC, SEA, Port Authority, to really pick their brain on what works and what doesn't, so we can write a really kind of smart and fair contract. So going into 2025, we'll be issuing an RFQ for 4 pilot projects, separate RFQs, but we have 4 pilot projects in the pipeline, so that we'll get NTP by January of next year.
Very cool. Yeah. And I know DDC is excited about it, and industry is excited too. When I'm out, especially with a lot of our GC clients, we do a lot of work with GCs and CMs. They're very excited for the opportunity to potentially participate on these CM Build programs. And I'll make a quick plug for CMAA here. That was, you guys did that panel, and I thought it was really great to hear the collaboration across agencies and what are best practices and how are you going to most effectively implement the program. So that's really cool. All right, we're going to switch gears again here because I always like to devote a part of the show to the next generation, right? I was very fortunate to have some great mentors and receive some great advice, early on in my career and even today. So my first question in this section is, what is some advice you have for the next generation of leaders? What are some things you did that made you successful and allowed you to, be who you are today, right? All the way to assistant commissioner.
I guess my advice, or something that I've learned over time, or I've kind of matured into, is to not shy away from bringing your person into work. Right, like bringing your personal self in, not in an overly not like in a too much information type of way, but just to kind of explain like who you are and what drives you. I was lucky enough to participate in the Coro leadership program a couple of years ago, and they really talked about like really drilling down into what do you care about, why do you do the work that you do, and so I think that's important to express to others, and that it's not just kind of the work itself, but it's like the person behind it and what drives that person. So I would encourage this next generation to keep that in mind and not shy away from that, and bring yourself, bring your personality to the table, because that's what people can really latch onto, and that's how you start to make connections. And I think that's greatly important.
Very cool. There's not directly correlated here, but to the point of why, there's a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. He has like a very popular TED Talk too, and it goes to the heart of that, right? It's more about businesses, but even on a personal level, what you're going to do, figure out why you're going to do it, right? You need to understand yourself in order to be successful. So is there like a quote or a mantra you like to live by? I'm like a big quotes guy, and I always love to hear quotes if anyone has them. Do you have one that you like to subscribe to?
Yeah, I'm not a very good quote person, but I would say if there is a mantra, the closest one that kind of comes into my head on a weekly, if not daily basis, is simply relationship over task. And this is something that I really honed and learned about in Coro, is that always prioritize the relationship with someone over the task at hand. Because once you have a solid relationship where you understand where the other person is coming from, the task will be so easy. That will be second nature. That will just like flow, right? But if you just attack the task itself, then you'll get caught up in, when things aren't going right or things aren't making sense, then there's no like underlying basis or understanding with the person that you're trying to do it with. So that's relationship over task would be my mantra.
I like that. I've actually never heard that. That's really cool. And that's why I love to ask that question. So I'm going to make a note of that later. And I'm sure at some point in the next few weeks, I'm going to share that with my team. I try to share something with them, and that's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
Um, and then what about like shifting to projects that you've built, right? What we do as an industry is so impactful on the communities we work in. Do you have like one or two projects you just want to talk about that you were like, I'm just so proud to have been part of that and what we did for the community there? I know you mentioned the aquatic center and some other projects earlier, but anything other than, anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. I guess I would say so beyond the kind of portfolio of recreation projects for the Parks Department that I'm doing at DDC, prior to that, when I was at EDC, I managed East Midtown Greenway, which is the new Esplanade structure, also for the Parks Department. That's in the East River, kind of between 54th and 61st Street. And I remember when I was first assigned that project, being completely scared and nervous because I've never done an in-water structure like that before. It's 40 feet off the bulkhead of Manhattan. It's a 40-foot wide structure that has heavy marine engineering, marine construction, and a beautiful topside element. So I'm really proud of that project. It was 2 years in design, 3 years in construction. It was a CM build project. And the relationships I formed, going back to relationships, kind of the colleagues that I had on that team have become like my forever family. I always go to them for questions on future projects, and it's just a close bond that we share. And then if I could just plug one more project, it would
Of
be
course.
Hudson Street Streetscape, which was EDC's first design build project. And that's how I kind of got into this world of alternative delivery. And that's a new kind of expanded streetscape down in Lower Manhattan in the Hudson Square neighborhood. So it's given a lot more open space to that community, and also kind of helped bolster the business district as well.
Very cool. Look, design, build, and CM build right off the bat. Those are the two projects you had.
Yeah, I guess it's
That's
innate.
pretty cool. All right, we're going to jump into our lightning round. So, these are fast fire questions. Don't think too hard. Don't worry about your answers. But I'm going to jump right into it. Sunday afternoon, you find yourself with an hour, 2 hours to do something, whatever you want. Are you reading a book or are you watching a movie?
I'm neither. I'm sad to.
Oh,
Well, I'm definitely not into movies. So I guess of the two, I would say I'm a book
you're
person.
a book person. But what would
Yeah.
you be doing then? What is the
I think I would be just walking around outside in the neighborhood.
cool, being outside.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so then my next question was going to be you finally get a week off. You've perfected design build and CM build and DDC is running at it. So are you
Mhm.
taking a beach vacation or are you doing a city escape?
Beach vacation.
So you're a beach person. Okay, cool.
Yes, yes.
Um and then what's I guess you actually touched on this one already, but I was going to ask what's like a key skill every leader should have?
Uh, the ability to build trust and build confidence in your own team.
Very cool. Well, that's all we have today. I really thank you, Evie, for your time. I can't imagine how busy you are, so I know this was probably a big ask, so I appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off here?
No, well, I guess this would be my second good news and gratitude. If I could close out with that,
Of
I would
course.
be remiss not to mention the Commissioner of DDC, Tom Foley. Right, he kind of I wouldn't say volunteered me for this, but he made the connection with you and I, and it's something I wouldn't naturally kind of be inclined or comfortable to do, but he's a great leader. He has confidence in his team, and he kind of gave me this opportunity to kind of stretch my wings. So I am appreciative to him for that.
That is awesome. And you were fantastic. I hope you know that. And I'm sure when you listen to this episode, you'll see that. And being outside of your comfort zone, this is outside my comfort zone. And now I've done this for a little bit, so I feel a little bit better. But when I
Yeah.
first started, it was my business coach who it sounds like Commissioner Foley is supportive of you and a lot of your initiatives. And so my business coach is that way for me. He's like, you got to do something outside your comfort zone. And this is what we ended up with. And I was like, all right, I guess
Wow.
I'll do.
I love that.
Yeah. So, but all right, well, that's all the time we have for today. We'll include links to any resources we mentioned in today's show notes. And thanks again for listening, everybody. Keep an eye out for our next episode.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Building Better Futures. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review. This episode is brought to you by Infinite Consulting Corp., your go-to firm for MBE certified project and construction management consulting. Discover how Infinite can help you build a better future at infiniteconsultingcorp.com.